I reached for the phone to ask my son, Max, when the big day was, and my daughter-in-law, Lena, met my eyes with a cool little smile. "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words landed like an ice bath. Special people. For 3 years, I'd covered their $500 rent, furnished their home piece by piece, stocked their fridge when it was bare, and somehow I wasn't special. I stood there in my own living room, clutching the phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds, while my son stared at the floor and Lena sank back into the sofa I'd purchased for them. The pale blush dress I'd bought for her wedding, a careful $200 splurge, hung untouched in my closet, along with the new shoes in my foolish hope of standing in at my only child's happiest moment. I had pictured myself in the photos I would never appear in. For weeks, I'd budgeted and saved to give them a $1,000 wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago with the news. I had scrubbed my house top to bottom, thinking they might stop by to celebrate afterward. All of that vanished with 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Max finally looked up and said, like he'd practiced it, "Mom, it was very intimate, just us and the witnesses." But I already knew the truth. I'd seen the pictures online, the ones I wasn't supposed to find. Lena's parents beaming beside them, her siblings clinking champagne flutes, Lena in her white dress. The same month I'd floated her $800 for personal expenses. I saw everything I was meant to miss. Exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Lena phoned again, but this time her voice wasn't smug. It was tight and pleading. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressing us and says if we don't pay this week, we'll be out. You forgot to make the transfer." I let the silence stretch. I thought of all the times I'd hustled to the bank to move money, rearranged my own plans so they could have a roof, eating beans and rice to cover their cravings. The audacity of calling me as if nothing had happened. "Renee," I said, startled by the calm in my own voice. "Didn't I tell you I only help special people?" The quiet on the other end was so complete I could hear my heartbeat. For the first time in years, it wasn't me trembling. It was her. "Renee, I don't understand," she faltered. "We've always been special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Pretty lies wrapped in that syrupy tone she used when she needed cash. The same voice that had extracted money for the dress, the honeymoon, the rings, all of it funded, never to be witnessed. I'd spent years tiptoeing on eggshells, measuring every word and gift, chasing crumbs of affection for my own son. I was the perfect mother, the obliging mother-in-law, the quiet provider who swallowed it each time they made me invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," kicked awake a part of me I'd buried for far too long. That night, I did what I should have done years ago. I did the math. I wanted to see, on paper, how deep my self-betrayal ran. Monthly rent, $500 times 36 months, $18,000. Groceries and household supplies at roughly $200 a month, $7,200. Gifts for birthdays, Christmas, and anniversaries, at least $3,000. Lena's health emergencies, $800. A car loan they never repaid, $2,500. Air conditioner repair in their apartment, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. $33,400. That was the price tag on my generosity. $33,400 siphoned from my retirement, from the nest egg my late husband left so I could grow old in peace. I had poured it into the comfort of 2 adults who couldn't be bothered to treat me with basic respect. I cried that night, but it wasn't sadness. It was fury. Years of swallowed insult and quiet humiliation finally boiling over. I wept for the times they made me feel like my love was a nuisance, my presence a hassle, and my only value a bank transfer. I grieved the foolish mother I'd become, the woman who vanished herself to be indispensable to people who found her dispensable. When morning came, something in me had reset. It wasn't just the sting of being cut out. It was colder, clearer. I stood in the bathroom and studied my face. The same tired eyes, the same map of wrinkles from years of giving without return. But now, there was a steel I didn't recognize. A resolve. I brewed coffee like I had for 40 years. But this time, I didn't check my phone hoping for an apology. I didn't hover, aching for a text that would never come. For the first time in a long time, I was the first person on my mind. I sat at the kitchen table where I planned surprises, counted out dollars for their bills, and cried quietly after their snubs, and declared it the sight of something new. I took out my checkbook and statements and kept the ledger I'd started the night before. Rent, food, gifts, emergencies, whims. I stared down the number again, $33,400. Around mid-morning, my phone lit with Max's name. In the past, my heart would have leapt and I'd have dashed to answer, desperate for an explanation that made me feel included again. This time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. It stopped. I lifted my mug. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Lena. I let it go to voicemail. A text from Max followed. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. Delete. At 2 in the afternoon, I went for a walk. Not to run an errand for them, not to pick up a prescription for Lena, not to wire transfer rent. Just because I wanted to breathe outside air. I passed the park where I used to take Max. I could see that little boy again, the one who hugged so hard and told me I was the best mom in the world. When had he turned into a man who treated me like an ATM with emotions? When did I start treating money like proof of love? I stopped at the bank. Through the glass, the branch manager, Mr. Klein, spotted me and waved. He'd watched every one of my transfers. He'd watched my balance shrink month after month, and he always greeted me with gentle kindness. I walked straight to his office. Mr. Klein, I need to cancel all the automatic transfers. He blinked, surprised. For 3 years, those transactions were as regular as sunrise. Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen? His concern felt more genuine than anything I'd heard from my son in months. Yes, I said. I finally opened my eyes. Cancel everything. And please show me how to lock down my accounts so no one else can access them. While he made the changes, my phone lit up over and over. Max, then Lena, then Max again, like they had a sixth sense for when their revenue stream was threatened. I powered the phone off. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Klein said gently as he handed me the paperwork, forgive me for saying so, but I've watched you be very generous. I hope you aren't being coerced either way. I swallowed. This man who knew me mostly through transaction codes showed me more human care than my own son. No one is pressuring me, I said. I stopped pressuring myself. I stepped out of the bank feeling strangely weightless, as if I dropped a boulder had been carrying on my back. For the first time in years, my money was wholly mine. No more obligations to people who treated me like a resource instead of a person. Walking home, I thought about all the things I denied myself to keep Max and Lena afloat. Trips I didn't take, friends I didn't see, hobbies I abandoned because every dollar I spent on me felt like theft from them. Enough. When I turned onto my street, my stomach tightened. 3 cars were parked in front of my house. Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. I could see silhouettes moving inside through the front window. They had keys. I'd given them keys because I trusted them, because I thought someday they'd return the care I poured into them. I took a deep breath. Time to meet my new life head on. I opened my own front door to a sight I won't forget. Max sat on my sofa, head in his hands. Lena paced, agitated. An older man in a gray suit I didn't know stood at my dining table, thumbing through papers. My papers. What exactly is going on? I asked, louder than I intended. They all turned and stared at me as though I were the intruder. Lena spoke first, urgency dripping from each syllable. Renat, thank God. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher from the firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? I repeated evenly. I'm doing just fine. What situation? Max finally lifted his head. Those eyes that used to be so sweet, now full of financial panic. Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled the transfers. Mr. Klein said you also put restrictions on the accounts. We don't understand why you do that. The man in the suit approached. Hand out. Mrs. Richter, I'm Mr. Fisher, a family attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and asked me to assess. I didn't take his hand. I marched to the dining table and gathered my documents from under his fingers. These are private. You have no right to rifle through them. Mom, we're worried. You're acting strangely, cutting off support without warning, not answering calls. It's not like you. We think you might need help. Lena stepped close, trying to take my hand in that counterfeit tenderness she kept for moments she wanted something. Renate, sweetheart, we know you're under stress. Maybe the loneliness is getting to you. At your age, it's normal to have episodes of confusion. Confusion? The word rang in my skull like a siren. Now I understood why they'd brought a lawyer. This wasn't help. It was a setup to declare me incompetent and take the wheel. I am not confused, I said, the force in my voice freezing the room. I'm clearer than I've been in years, and you're all going to leave my house right now. Mr. Fisher tried the professional-sounding reassurance. Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children are within their rights to intervene if they believe your decision-making is impaired. They've documented concerning behavior. Concerning like what? I snapped. Like deciding my money is mine? Like declining to bankroll 2 full-grown adults who treat me like garbage? Lena flinched as if I'd slapped her. We have never treated you badly. You're family. Everything you have will be ours someday anyway. We're just accelerating the process. There it was. The raw truth, stripped of sugar. In their minds, I was already dead. My life was just their pre-inheritance waiting room. Out, I said, pointing at the door. All of you. Max stood, wearing that petulant little boy fury I remembered from tantrums. We can't just leave, Mom. We have bills, rent, the car payment, the credit card you co-signed. You can't cut us off overnight. Can't I? My voice finally rose. Who says I can't? For years, I've paid a rent that wasn't mine, filled a fridge in a home where I wasn't welcome, and financed a life that didn't make room for me. Mr. Fisher pulled a folder from his briefcase and set it on the table. We've prepared a power of attorney to make this simpler. Max and Lena can manage your finances, for now, until you're feeling better. I picked up the folder and dropped it straight into the trash. The only transition happening here is you transitioning out my front door. Lena started to cry, not grief, but rage in a wet costume. You can't do this to us, Renate. We counted on you. We made plans. We took on obligations because we knew we could rely on you. Obligations built on my money, not on my company, not on my happiness, just on my balance. And now that I've decided to invest in my own life, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs a guardian. Max stepped closer. I stepped back. He wasn't a little boy afraid of bad dreams anymore. He was a 35-year-old man who saw me as a roadblock between him and an easy life on someone else's dime. Mom, we made mistakes, he said in his most remorseful tone. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you'll be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated, the taste of it bitter. Meaning, I keep paying while you pretend I don't exist. Meaning, I pretend it didn't tear me apart to be excluded from your wedding. Mr. Fisher gathered his papers with the tidy efficiency of a man used to doors closing. Mrs. Richter, this isn't over. Your family has legal options. If you're making irrational choices due to mental health decline, a judge can assign guardianship. The threat landed heavy. So this wasn't just manipulation. It was a legal opening salvo. Mr. Fisher, I said, meeting his eyes, I suggest you research thoroughly before threatening a 71-year-old woman who's balanced her books without a hiccup for 4 decades, raised her son alone after her husband died, ran a household, and worked honorably until retirement, and funded 2 perfectly capable adults until last week. Lena's tears evaporated. Her face went cold. This won't stay like this, Renate. We have rights and lawyers. Wonderful. Hire all the lawyers you like with your own money. Mine is no longer underwriting your tantrums. They shuffled out with the wounded pride of people unused to hearing no. At the threshold, Max turned. Mom, this is going to end badly for you. You'll be alone with no one to care for you when you really need it. Max, I said, my voice sad and clear. I already am alone. The difference is now it's by choice, not neglect. When the door clicked shut, the quiet that filled my house was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. Freedom is very, very quiet. I didn't sleep that night. Not from regret, but from adrenaline. I lay awake, planning like a general before battle. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But mine would be fought with strategy, not tears. At dawn, I dressed and headed to see Mr. Weber, the attorney who'd handled my husband's will. Unlike their hired gun, Mr. Weber's reputation was spotless, and he specialized in protecting older adults. Mrs. Richter, he said after listening carefully, what you attempted is more common than you think. It's elder financial abuse, and it's a crime. Entering your home and going through private papers without consent is a violation too. Relief and worry mingled in my chest. Relief that I wasn't imagining the abuse. Worry because I understood the stakes. We need to document everything, he continued. Every transfer, gift, instance of pressure. We'll also update your will to shield your assets from future manipulation. We spent 3 hours tracing every payment. Mr. Weber let out a low whistle when he saw the total. $33,400 in 3 years? Mrs. Richter, you could have traveled, taken classes, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you financed 2 adults who didn't invite you to their wedding. I left his office with a plan. First, change every lock. Second, install a full security system with cameras. Third, open a new account at a different bank. No shared history, no friendly faces they could sway. Fourth, start living the life I'd shelved. At the hardware store, Mr. Sommer, who'd seen me countless times buying parts for Max and Lena's place, looked surprised when I asked for the best locks they had. For my house, I added, smiling. Time for an upgrade. His son, Ethan, walked in while we were picking hardware. Do you install security systems? All the bells and whistles. Absolutely, he said. We can start tomorrow. As I stepped outside, my phone lit with an unknown number. I knew who it was before I answered. Renate, it's Lena. Please don't hang up. Let's talk like adults. Say what you called to say, I replied. I know you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner to celebrate? Just us. We can do it at your place. Cook like we used to. The manipulation was so transparent, I almost laughed. How much rent are you behind? I asked. Silence. Then, 2 months, 1,000. But I'm not just calling about that, Renate. We miss you. Do you miss me? I asked. Or my money? Both, she said, surprisingly honest. Yes, we need your help, but we love you too. You matter to us. If I mattered, I said evenly, why didn't I matter enough to be at your wedding? When was the last time you called me without asking for money? She didn't answer. We both knew the truth. Listen carefully, I said. For 3 years, you treated me like a cash machine with feelings. You used me, ignored me, humiliated me, and then you delivered the deepest insult of all. Now that the cash has stopped, you've discovered affection? Please, there is no please, I said, and ended the call. Then I powered my phone back down again. No more interruptions on my liberation day. I drove straight to the salon I hadn't set foot in for over a year, always canceling because Max or Lena had emergencies, always redirecting my little luxuries to their needs. Mrs. Richter, Cynthia beamed. We thought you'd forgotten us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia. I forgot me. I got the works. Cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent on myself without guilt. Cynthia chattered about her kids and dreams, and it felt like air after a long time underwater. You look beautiful, she said when we finished. But more than that, you look free. Yes, I said. I finally learned how to say no. When I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, an unfamiliar car idled at the curb. My pulse ticked up. For a moment, I feared a second ambush. Then I noticed an older woman on my porch steps with a mug in her hands. "Mrs. Richter?" she called as I got out. "I'm Eleanor Brooks, next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never had a proper chat. I heard raised voices yesterday and wanted to make sure you're okay." Her kindness went straight to the sorest part of me. "Come in," I said softly. "I'll put on coffee and tell you a story you won't believe." I poured coffee and told Eleanor everything, from the special people dig to the silent bank transfers to the ambush in my own dining room. She listened without interrupting, hands wrapped around her mug. "Mrs. Richter," she said softly when I finished, "you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I thought it was my duty to bankroll her adulthood. I thought if I stopped, I'd lose her. When I finally cut the cord, she tried every trick: guilt, threats, crocodile tears. 6 months later, she called with a real apology. We rebuilt. Now our relationship is clean. Love, not transactions." My throat tightened. "Do you think Max and Lena will ever understand?" "Maybe," she said honestly. "Maybe not. But that's not your job to figure out anymore. Your job is to live your life." That night, I slept like I hadn't in years. At 8 a.m., Ethan and Mr. Sommer showed up with locks and equipment. While they worked, my phone kept buzzing from unknown numbers. Lena, undoubtedly. I ignored everyone. "This system will give you peace of mind," Ethan said as he mounted the last camera. "You'll get alerts on your phone. If anyone forces entry, it pings the police automatically." I nodded at the irony. Imagine installing security to protect myself from my own son. It didn't hurt anymore. It was just practical. With the house secured, I did something I'd put off far too long. I called my sister, Diana. "Renat," she said, startled and pleased. "It's been ages." It has. And I finally came to my senses. I told her everything. The secret wedding, the lawyer stunt, the transfers I canceled. "About time," she said softly when I finished. "Every call, you'd rattle off what you bought them, how much you sent, as if love were receipts. I wanted to tell you this, but I didn't know how. When I'd see Max at family gatherings, he never talked about you as a person. It was always, Mom covered this, Mom paid for that. Never, I miss my mom. Never, I love my mom." Her words stung like antiseptic. It hurt, but it cleaned the wound. "And Leanna," Diana added, voice low, "she always spoke in the future tense. When Renat's not around, we'll redo her place. When we inherit, we'll invest. Like they were waiting for you to die to start living." I thanked her for the truth, even though it carved me open. After we hung up, I sat very still at my kitchen table and let reality settle in. I wasn't losing love. I was losing an illusion I'd financed. A little while later, the doorbell rang. On the camera feed, I saw Eleanor again, this time with a travel mug in her hand and a flower-dusted smile. "I brought coffee," she said as I opened the door. "Thought you might want company." We settled into the living room, and she told me more about her own battle. My daughter used the same lines Leanna does. "You're like a second mom. We're special. Everything will be ours anyway." It's like they all read the same script. "You really think there's a handbook for this?" I asked, half laughing. "Not printed," she grinned, "but the chapters are always the same. 1, make her feel indispensable. 2, manufacture constant emergencies. 3, when she resists, question her sanity." We laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. Recognition is painful and oddly relieving. I asked her, "Did you feel guilty?" "Every day for the first 3 months," she said. Then the change started. My daughter took a second job. Her husband found extra shifts. They learned to live within their means. More important, they learned I'm a person, not a pipeline. That afternoon, I did something else I'd postponed too long. I took a cab to the cemetery. Robert's grave looked neglected. My fault. I knelt, cleaned the stone, replaced the tired flowers with fresh ones, and sat in the grass. "Robert," I said into the soft wind, "I lost myself. I poured everything into Max after you died, convinced I could fill both roles if I just gave enough. Somewhere along the way, I disappeared." The breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and for a moment, I felt him near. Our boy. I don't recognize who he is, I whispered. Or maybe he's always been this way and I refuse to see it. The money you left so I could be free, I spent keeping them afloat. But not anymore. I'm done. Peace settled over me like a shawl. I stayed another hour, just breathing. When I pulled onto my street later, 3 cars lined up at my curb again, Max and Lena's among them, plus 2 I didn't know. My phone buzzed with a text from the camera app. Motion detected. I didn't get out. I called Mr. Weber. They're here again, with extra people, I said. What do I do? Stay in your car, he said. I'm on my way. I'm also calling the police. The judge granted a temporary restraining order this morning. Minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled up behind Mr. Weber's sedan. I watched from the driver's seat as officers spoke with Max and Lena. My son's arms flew as he argued. Lena cried those pretty tears that used to undo me. Not anymore. An officer came to my window. Ma'am, you can come out. We've informed them they're in violation of the order. They need to leave. I stepped out. From the street, Max shouted, Mom, this is insane. You called the cops on your own son? Family? I said, evenly. Doesn't threaten to have me declared incompetent. Family doesn't break in and paw through my private papers. Family doesn't treat their mother like a debit card. You're going to pay us back for everything, Lena shrieked from the sidewalk. You call-signed bills. You can't just abandon us. Mr. Weber lifted a hand. Any further contact goes through my office, and I suggest you be cautious about collections threats. I have comprehensive documentation of every voluntary payment my client made over 3 years. That evening, Eleanor invited me over. Her daughter was visiting, and I got a small, beautiful glimpse of what healthy looks like. Gentle questions, warmth, laughter, not one ask for money. I wanted that with Max. I confessed later as we washed dishes. Maybe you'll have it one day, she said, but he has to learn you're a human being with boundaries, not a line item. The next days were oddly calm. The cameras caught Max and Lena circling the block, idling out front, then moving on. Mr. Weber told me to keep a log. It helps your case for a permanent order, he said. Persistence works in our favor. On Friday morning, the bell rang. The camera showed a young woman in a blazer holding a folder and wearing an official smile. Good morning, Mrs. Renat Richter, she said when I opened the door. I'm a social investigator with Senior Services. We received a report that you may be at risk and need to conduct a wellness check. My stomach turned to ice. They'd taken it up a notch. Government level. May I see your ID? I asked. She showed me. It looked legitimate. I'm Miss Schmidt, she said. May I come in? I stepped aside. Refusing would only feed their narrative. She sat on my sofa and opened her folder. We've received reports of significant changes in your financial behavior, that you've cut off communication with family, and that you installed an extensive security system due to paranoia. We were told you're refusing medical and legal help. Every word was an accusation wearing a cardigan. I could hear Lena spin in the phrasing. Miss Schmidt, I said evenly, I'd like to call my attorney before we continue. This isn't an interrogation, ma'am. If you have nothing to hide, that line always lights me on fire. I'm calling my lawyer. You're welcome to wait. Mr. Weber arrived within 20 minutes. When he saw her badge, his voice cooled. Miss Schmidt, I hope you have a court order. My client is represented. An unannounced, unsupervised check can be construed as harassment. We received reports from concerned family, she said, confidence thinning. We have to follow up. The same family that attempted to force a power of attorney? He asked. The same who entered her home and rifled private papers? The same who excluded her from major events while living off her money? He set a folder on the table. Here's documentation of financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 extracted over 3 years, social isolation, coercion. Miss Schmidt skimmed, her expression tightening. The story she'd been fed didn't match the facts in front of her. She turned to me. Mrs. Richter, why did you abruptly stop supporting your son? Because I realized I was being used, I said simply. Because to them, I wasn't a mother, I was a wallet. Because I'm done funding people who see me as an obstacle. Don't you feel responsible for helping family? She pressed. My responsibility was to raise my son to adulthood. He's 35, married, and perfectly capable of working. Supporting his lifestyle is not my duty. It's a choice. And I've chosen no. Mr. Weber added, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old mom to require his 71-year-old mother to pay his rent? She didn't answer right away. Mrs. Richter, do you manage your own finances? Completely. I can show you statements, investments, tax filings, all current. Do you live independently? You can see the home I maintain. I cook. I drive. I have neighbors who check on me. I have friendships, medications, vitamins, and aspirin. That's it. My client also underwent a full medical workup this month. Mental and physical health are excellent. Miss Schmidt closed the folder and stood. Based on what I've seen and the documentation provided, I find no cause for intervention. I'll be closing this case. After she left, Mr. Weber stayed. Renate, he said, this will likely escalate. They're desperate. Next step is a competency position. It's costly and hard to win, but if they find a sympathetic evaluator and a weak judge, it can get messy. So they're willing to burn everything down for money. I said, that's what this looks like. I called Diana to vent. Do you see how far they'll go? She said. They'll risk your relationship, spend money they don't have, even ruin their own names just to pry open your accounts again. Her bluntness snapped something into place. Whatever guilt lingered fell away. They were making their values crystal clear. That evening, Eleanor stopped by with a small army, the garden club. Renate, she said, these are my friends. Cynthia, yes, from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. Every one of us has walked a version of your road. We traded stories. Maria had set boundaries with a brother who treated her like an ATM. Carmen had cut ties with a daughter who only appeared with her palm out. Alfreda had rewritten her will when her grandkids started talking like she was their pension plan. What hurts most, I admitted, is realizing the love I thought I had wasn't real. I didn't lose love. I lost a performance I paid for. Renate, Alfreda said, 80 years of truth in her voice. Love isn't for sale. If you had to pay for it, it was never love. We all laughed when I added, you know what I've learned? Being lonely in a house full of people who don't love you is worse than being alone with yourself. At least now, I like my company. We toasted to boundaries and freedom. Later in the quiet of my garden, the stars looked sharper, or maybe my eyes did. For the first time in my adult life, my money answered to no one but me. It didn't scare me, it thrilled me. I could travel, paint, remodel, donate to causes that mattered, invest in the only person I'd been starving, myself. Freedom tasted like hope, and for the first time in years, I wanted to make plans. About a month later, I thought I'd finally turn the page. I'd fallen into a gentle routine, breakfast in peace, time in the garden, lunch with Eleanor, and in the afternoons I painted at a new easel I'd treated myself to. I was lining petals with a fine brush when the doorbell rang. Mr. Weber stood there, face tight. Renate, we need to talk, he said. Max and Lena have filed a formal incompetency petition in family court. They're asking the judge to appoint a guardian over you. The words felt like stones dropping into my chest. Does that mean they could take control of my money? If a judge rules you're unable to manage your affairs, yes, a guardian could be appointed, possibly Max. He paused. But we're not going to let that happen. What evidence do they have? I asked, bitterness sharpening my voice. They've submitted 3 sworn statements. Lena's, of course, a neighbor, Mr. Davis, and your pharmacist, Mr. Green. They also attached supposed unpaid medical bills and claimed you're hoarding medications. Finally, they included a note from a Dr. Lehman stating you refused a mental health evaluation, which they're spinning as proof of decline. That's all lies, I said, heat rising in my face. I don't have unpaid medical bills. I take vitamins and the occasional aspirin, and I refused an evaluation because I don't need one, especially not from a doctor they handpicked. Let's start untangling it, Mr. Weber said. First stop, the pharmacy. We drove to Mr. Green's. He looked surprised to see me, then flustered when he saw Mr. Weber at my side. Mrs. Richter, he said, cheeks reddening. "Is everything all right? I've been told you signed a statement saying I behave erratically with my medications," I said plainly. He rubbed at the back of his neck. "Your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago, said she was worried about you. She asked what you buy. I told her the truth, that you only purchase vitamins and aspirin. She said that proved you weren't taking proper care of your health. Then she handed me a form to sign, something about confirming irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for insurance. I didn't realize that it would be used in court against me." Mr. Weber leaned in. "Mr. Green, we need a corrective statement. You'll write exactly what you told us, that Mrs. Richter does not take prescription meds, does not have unpaid medical bills you know of, and that you were misled into signing." "Of course," he said, mortified. "I'm so sorry." "Not your fault," I said. "You were played." From there, we went to see Mr. Davis across the street. He opened his door with the scowl already in place. "What now?" he snapped. "I understand you signed a statement about my odd behavior," I said, keeping my voice even. "What exactly did you observe? You installed cameras like you're guarding Fort Knox. You've got strangers coming and going. You yelled at your family in the street. It's not normal. The cameras are to protect me from my son and daughter-in-law who entered without permission," I said. "The strangers are my friends and neighbors. And I raised my voice because my family brought a lawyer to force me into signing away my finances." "That's what a crazy person would say," he muttered, folding his arms. "I'm not changing my statement." There was no reasoning with him. He preferred his snap judgment to the messy truth. That evening, Mr. Weber spread papers across my table. "Here's our plan. We'll file Mr. Green's correction. We'll document every police visit, every violation of the temporary order, and your financial records. Next, we schedule a formal capacity evaluation with a neutral expert I trust." "What if Max and Lena grease the skids?" I asked. "What if they find a judge who believes them?" "The system isn't perfect," he said gently, "but it isn't lawless. We'll present a thorough, professional evaluation. I'll refer you to Dr. Moore. She's a respected specialist in capacity assessments. When can she see me?" "Tomorrow, if you're willing." "I am," I said. And I was. Not because I doubted myself, but because I refused to let their lies stand unchallenged. That night, I stared at the ceiling, anger and grief taking turns at my bedside. My own son was trying to put a legal leash around my life, not because I was unwell, but because I'd stopped paying. There was no going back after this. Whatever we had already cracked. What remained now was my spine. Dr. Moore saw me the very next morning. She had steady eyes and a calm voice that made it easy to breathe. "Mrs. Richter," she said, "I'm going to ask you questions about your daily routines, your finances, and give you some memory and reasoning tests. Take your time." For 2 hours, we covered everything: dates, numbers, puzzles, hypothetical scenarios, checkbook-style problems, even recalling details from a short story. She asked about my bills, my bank statements, my investments, and my recent choices. I answered with the same clarity I'd used to run my life for decades. At the end, she smiled. "Your results are not only within the normal range, they're above average for your age. You are fully capable of managing your own affairs." "Then why are they doing this?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "From what I've reviewed, this fits a common pattern. Elder financial exploitation. Adult children or in-laws attempt to seize control when a source of money closes. I'm sorry you're going through it, but you are mentally sound." Validation felt like a warm blanket, and still, sadness pressed at the edges. Knowing I was fine didn't erase the fact that my own son had put me here. That afternoon, Eleanor rallied the troops. She brought the garden club to my living room. Cynthia from the salon, Maria, Carmen and Alfreda with her gentle 80-year-old wisdom. When I told them about the petition, everyone spoke up at once. "We'll testify," Maria said immediately. "We've seen you every week. You're clear as a bell. Better than many 40-year-olds. Cynthia added. "I'll bring my appointment records if needed." Alfreda took my hands. "Renata, this isn't new. Greedy relatives have been trying to declare elders unfit for generations. But you have what many didn't: documentation, counsel, and a circle of women who will stand beside you. Their support steadied me. Do you know what hurts the most? I said quietly. It isn't the money. It's knowing there's no going back from this. Even if I forgave what came before, this ends the illusion. Maybe that's a hidden mercy, Cynthia said gently. At least now you can act with your eyes open. That night, I cried for real. Not out of fear, but out of grief. I said goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the fantasy of a warm family I tried to buy with generosity, to the belief that unconditional love had been reciprocated. When the tears were done, something tougher remained, a steel resolve not to surrender my money, my freedom, or my dignity. Mr. Weber filed Dr. Moore's evaluation, Mr. Green's corrected statement, and a thick bundle of exhibits: my logs, camera footage, bank records, police reports, and the senior services closure letter. A court date landed on the calendar: 3 weeks. The morning of the hearing crept closer. On the last strategy review, Mr. Weber looked me straight in the eye. Remember, the burden's on them. They must prove you're incompetent. We only need to show what's already true. You aren't. And the judge, I asked, what if he's predisposed to believe concerned family? Judge Miller has a reputation for being even-handed. He's ruled for elders' autonomy before. We show our work. We tell the whole truth. Let them try their story. I nodded. Then we go tell the truth. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the alarm. I put on my best black suit, pinned back my hair, and looked myself in the eye. Today wasn't only about my mind. It was about my right to live as an adult human being, not as someone's walking wallet. Mr. Weber picked me up at 7. We reviewed our notes one last time in the courthouse hallway. When we rounded the corner to our courtroom, I saw Max in a crisp new suit and Lena in somber black, as if attending a funeral. Perhaps they were, of what we once had. Their attorney, an elegant older man, opened with the story they wanted the judge to believe. Your Honor, he intoned, Mrs. Renata Richter has exhibited a marked decline. She abruptly cut off support her family depends on, installed excessive security systems due to paranoia, isolated herself, and fallen under the influence of neighbors and attorneys who are exploiting her. He made self-determination sound like instability. He made boundaries sound like delusion. Lena took the stand first. She cried on cue, voice trembling. Renat has always been like a second mother to me, she said. Watching her change has been heart-wrenching. She's become hostile and suspicious. We just want her to get the help she needs. When Mr. Weber stood for cross-examination, his tone was courteous, his questions precise. Mrs. Schuster, he began, when was the last time you called my client for a chat without requesting money? Lena blinked. We talked about lots of things. A date, please. I don't remember dates. Is it accurate that you and your husband were married without inviting my client? It was a very intimate ceremony. When my client asked about the wedding, did you tell her you had invited only special people? Color climbed her neck. Those words were taken out of context. What context makes that appropriate to say to your mother-in-law? She had no answer. Max testified next. Seeing my son lift his hand and swear to tell the truth twisted something inside me. My mom has always been generous, he said, but lately she's been irrational. She won't answer calls. She's shut us out. We're concerned she's being manipulated. Mr. Weber returned to the lectern. Mr. Richter, how much money has your mother given you and your wife over the past 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,400 sound familiar? She's always helped us, he hedged. How many times in that period did you visit your mother without asking her for money? He said nothing. Is it true you and your wife entered her home without permission? We were worried. Is it true you brought a lawyer to her dining room to pressure her to sign a power of attorney? We wanted to help her manage things. At 35, do you require your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? He stared past Mr. Weber, jaw tight. Their neighbor, Mr. Davis, took the stand and described my odd behavior. Cameras, visitors, raising my voice in the street. He admitted under questioning that he had never spoken to me and that he had no context for what he'd seen. Then came Dr. Lehman, the clinician they'd found. He testified that my refusal to undergo an assessment was consistent with declining insight. Mr. Weber asked if he had ever personally examined me. He had not. Whether he'd reviewed Dr. Moore's report. He had not. With that, their side rested. Our case began quietly. Mr. Green, my pharmacist, walked to the stand looking mortified. He explained how Lena had come fishing for information, how he described my vitamin and aspirin purchases, and how she'd put a paper in front of him that he thought was for insurance. I didn't understand it would be used to say she was misusing medications. He said, "That's not true. She doesn't take any prescriptions." Next, Mr. Sommer testified that he'd known me for years, had watched me choose high-quality locks and a standard security package, and that nothing about my behavior had seemed confused or erratic. Then Mr. Weber called Miss Schmidt, the social worker. She described the wellness check, the documentation she reviewed, and her decision to close the case with no action. "Did you find any reason to believe Mrs. Richter was unable to live independently?" Mr. Weber asked. "No," she said. "Her home was orderly, her finances well managed, and her explanations coherent." Finally, Dr. Moore took the stand. Calm and professional, she explained her credentials and the evaluation process: history, cognitive testing, functional assessment. "And your conclusion?" Mr. Weber asked. "That Mrs. Richter is cognitively intact and fully capable of managing her affairs. Her scores were above average for her age." Their attorney tried to undermine her, but each question died against her preparation. She had notes, parameters, results. She had substance. Mr. Weber glanced at me. "Ready?" he whispered. I nodded and stood. I walked to the witness stand with my chin up and my heart steady. 71 years sit differently on you when you finally decided to be on your own side. Mr. Weber guided me gently. "Mrs. Richter, please tell the court in your own words what brought us here." I told it all, plainly and without drama. The 3 years of support, $500 rent every month, groceries, furniture, emergencies, and indulgences, $33,400 in total. The secret wedding, the phrase, "only special people." The afternoon I came home to find a lawyer in my dining room and my private papers under a stranger's hand. The push for a power of attorney, the threats to have me declared incompetent, the wellness check I passed with no issues, why I installed locks and cameras, and the moment I decided to stop financing 2 adults who refused to treat me with dignity. "Why did you cut off support?" Mr. Weber asked. "Because I understood at last that what I was getting wasn't love," I said, my voice clear. "It was a transaction disguised as family. My money was welcome. I was not. Do you regret your decision?" "Only that it took me this long." Their attorney rose for the cross-exam. He tried to tangle me up with dates and insinuations, implying I'd been influenced by neighbors and a pushy lawyer. "Mrs. Richter, isn't it true you've recently become distrustful and isolated?" "No," I said. "I'm selective. There's a difference." "Did your neighbor encourage you to cut off your children?" "My neighbor listened. I made my own decision." "Isn't it true that you refused evaluation out of fear of what it would show?" "I refused an evaluation from their hired doctor. I voluntarily completed one with the neutral specialist who found me fully capable." He pressed for contradictions. He didn't find any. Facts are stubborn things when you've lived them. When both sides rested, their attorney returned to the podium. He painted a picture of a vulnerable widow swayed by outsiders, growing paranoid, cutting off her loving family. He made independence sound like illness. Mr. Weber stood for our closing with quiet force. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs have offered no credible medical evidence. The only clinician who actually tested Mrs. Richter concluded she is cognitively sound. What we do have is a thorough record of financial exploitation. $33,400 withdrawn from a retiree over 3 years. A secret wedding, unlawful entry into her home, and attempts to strong-arm a power of attorney. This petition is not about protection. It's about access to money. The law protects elders' autonomy. Mrs. Richter is competent, and she has the right to say no." Judge Miller left to deliberate. 2 hours stretched like a dry riverbed. When he returned, his face was calm, his tone decisive. After reviewing the testimony, documentation, and expert evaluations, he said, the court finds that Mrs. Renata Richter is fully competent to manage her affairs. The psychiatric assessment is clear. The financial decisions at issue, however upsetting to family, are rational and within her legal rights. Furthermore, the court notes substantial evidence that this petition is driven by financial frustration rather than genuine concern. The request for guardianship is denied in full. I breathed for what felt like the first time in months. We stepped into the hallway. Lena shot me a look colder than January and stalked off. Max glanced at me, something like shame flickering before he turned away. Maybe he felt it. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I was done making my life hinge on his feelings. That evening, my living room filled with the people who had carried me. Eleanor in the garden club, Mr. Weber, even Cynthia after her last client. We ate simple food, laughed loudly, and cried a little. Elfrida raised her glass. Renata, she said, eyes sparkling, today you didn't just win a case. You reclaimed your life. And that, more than any court order, felt like justice. 3 months later, my life looked nothing like the one I used to live on autopilot. I sold the house that had witnessed both my best and hardest years and moved into a bright apartment near downtown, a place with morning light in the kitchen, quiet hallways, and the balcony that catches the evening breeze. At closing, I handed over the keys without a pang. It felt like setting down a heavy bag I'd carried too far. I donated half of my savings to organizations that fight elder abuse and support seniors standing up to financial exploitation. With the rest, I began to live the way I should have long ago. I booked a flight to Europe and wandered through small museums, sat in parks with a sketchbook, and remembered how it feels to be only responsible for myself. Back home, I enrolled in art classes, joined 2 volunteer groups, and made it a point to say yes to invitations that had nothing to do with solving anyone's crisis. I didn't hear from Max or Lena. Word filtered back through distant relatives that they'd moved into a smaller apartment and that Lena had taken a job, the first steady one in years. Maybe, just maybe, hardship would teach them what my generosity never did. The worth of honest work and the dignity of earning your own way. Some nights, I take a cup of tea out to the balcony and look up. The city hums below, the stars push through the glow, and I think about the woman I was a year ago. Anxious, malleable, convinced love could be purchased in monthly installments. She's gone. In her place is a woman who understands 2 truths I wish I'd learned sooner. Real love isn't for sale, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renat. I'm 72, and I finally learned that the first person I owe care, protection, and loyalty to is me. If this story resonated with you, and you'd like to help me keep writing more, you can support my work with a small donation. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. What would you do in my shoes? Share your perspective in the comments and tell me where you're listening from. For more life stories, like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are many more waiting for you. With heartfelt thanks, until next time.